The tiger was already locked on them, its barrel barely moving because it didn't have to. Private Eli Morgan wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of a trembling hand and stared into the narrow sight of the Sherman's main gun. Normandy, July 1944. Smoke hung over the hedgerows like ghosts refusing to leave. Their platoon was cut off, radio silent, and one wrong move would scatter their tank crew across the field like cinders. The Sherman tank, nicknamed Sparrow, had survived longer than most, though no one quite knew how. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was Eli. At 22, Morgan was the youngest gunner in the unit, a kid from Ohio who grew up shooting bottles behind barns and never thought he'd aim a cannon at a monster of steel. The Tiger Y, less than 800 yards away, had already turned two Shermans into twisted wrecks. Its gun could slice them in half like paper. "Do we move?" whispered Daniels, the loader, his voice cracking with doubt. Lieutenant Harrow didn't answer. He was staring at the periscope, unmoving. A shell had just missed them by inches. Now the Tiger was adjusting, learning. They wouldn't survive the next shot, but something about Eli's focus had gone still. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. He knew their gun couldn't penetrate the Tiger's front armor head on. It had been drilled into them from day one, flank or die. But the field was open, the tracks half buried in mud. No flanking, no cover. Dead center or nothing? Eli's fingers hovered over the trigger. "There's no angle," Daniels whispered again. "The shell will bounce." But Eli didn't blink. His mind saw something the others didn't. The Tiger had crept to a shallow incline. Its front plate, usually angled to deflect shots, now sat more vertical than usual, exposing a rare vulnerability, a factory flaw maybe, or a shift from terrain. Not enough for most to notice. But Eli had spent hours memorizing silhouettes, turret arcs, armor thickness, steel behavior under heat. He had once taken apart a farm truck just to see how its engine block transferred weight. In that instant, he wasn't just a scared farm kid in a steel coffin. He was an artist, a gambler, a technician. "Load AP," Eli said. Daniels hesitated. "We're dead if we stay," Harrow finally said, voice like gravel. "If he's sure, we try." The round slid into place with a metallic clunk. Eli exhaled once, not a prayer, not a curse, just air steady and silent. He fired. The world compressed into a recoil, a white flash, and a distant explosion that didn't sound like a miss. "You hit," Daniels started, but the periscope view told the story faster than words. The Tiger's turret didn't fire. It didn't move. Smoke curled from under its chassis, not the bright flash of a tank cooking off, but something deeper, internal. The crew inside scrambled out, dazed. The impossible had happened. Eli's shot had struck true, a 1 in 1,000 chance, maybe ricocheting into a hatch seam or penetrating a manufacturing defect. Harrow looked at Eli like he was seeing him for the first time. "What the hell did you just do?" "I aimed at what wasn't supposed to exist," Eli muttered, and just as quickly, reality surged back. Radio crackled to life with broken chatter. "Tiger down. Who got it?" But they didn't answer. They were already rolling forward, dust and disbelief trailing behind. In war, there are moments when time freezes, not because nothing happens, but because everything does. Eli had just created one, but that shot wasn't luck. And it wasn't over. As the Sherman moved beyond the burning husk of the Tiger, something unseen stirred from the forest ahead. Another threat, a shadow the size of consequence. And Eli, still gripping the trigger, whispered to himself, "That wasn't the last one." The story of the impossible shot spread like wildfire through the armored battalion. Tank crews who had once called the Sherman a death trap now spoke of it in hushed tones, as if it had grown fangs overnight. And at the center of that legend stood Eli Morgan, the quiet farm boy who had done what no one believed possible. But legends don't carry rations or fix broken treads, and they don't erase the shadow that came with survival. 2 days after the Tiger kill, Eli sat on an ammo crate behind a shattered farmhouse, cleaning the grease from Sparrow's breech with a stained cloth. The sun was setting over the French countryside, but the sky still carried the low drone of distant bombers. War never truly slept. Across from him, Lieutenant Harrow smoked in silence, staring at the horizon as if waiting for the next chapter to begin. It was Daniels who finally broke the quiet. They want us to head east. Command thinks there's another tiger somewhere near Chateau Blanc. He kicked a loose stone and looked at Eli. Guess who they want up front? Eli didn't answer. He kept cleaning. They think you've got some kind of sixth sense, Harrow said, voice low. Or maybe they just want to see if lightning strikes twice. That night, under a leaking canvas tarp, the crew ate quietly. A new face joined them. Corporal August Becker, a replacement driver. Their old one had lost his nerve and been reassigned. Becker was stocky, older than the others, with eyes that scanned too quickly. Too often, he claimed to have seen action in North Africa, but didn't talk much about it. So, Becker finally said, stirring his stew, you really hit that tiger front on. Eli nodded once. You believe in luck? Becker asked. I believe in steel, Eli said, and angles. But inside, Eli felt something else. Doubt. That shot had felt right, yes, but repeatable. He wasn't sure. And now Command wanted to use him as bait. Worse, as proof. His success had bought them fame, but fame in war is just a new uniform painted on a target. The next day, the convoy moved out. Sparrow led the formation down a narrow road flanked by hedges toward Chateau Blanc. The village had long since been evacuated, but scattered rumors said some civilians had returned, hiding in cellars, hoping the front would pass them by. Official orders were clear. Avoid delay, secure the high ground. Neutralize armor if spotted. But as they approached the edge of the village, a child ran into the road. Becker slammed the brakes. The Sherman groaned to a stop. The girl stood frozen in the dust, barefoot, clutching a bundle wrapped in cloth. Her eyes were wide with terror. There shouldn't be anyone here, Harrow muttered, peering out. Moments later, villagers began to emerge from the ruins. Elderly men, women with babies, two boys dragging a makeshift cart, dozens of them, thin and silent. Daniels climbed out first, rifle lowered. They're not a threat, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was time and orders. We radio this in, we get told to move on, Harrow said flatly. They'll leave these people. It's not our mission. Becker looked at Eli. And if we stay, risk armor fire while babysitting civilians, you think they'll thank us? Eli felt a cold pressure building in his chest. This wasn't a math problem. This wasn't armor angles or gun depression. These were lives. And somewhere nearby, another tiger could be waiting, hunting the road like a wolf waiting for prey to slow. We have food in the back, Daniels offered, and water. That won't stop a shell, Harrow snapped. But Eli was already climbing out of the turret. If we leave them, he said slowly, we might survive today, but we won't survive ourselves. Silence fell, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. They had to choose, obey orders and move on, or risk everything for strangers. The air felt heavier, charged. Somewhere beyond the trees, something was listening, watching. A second chance was coming, but this time it wasn't just about hitting a tank. It was about deciding who they were when no one else would ever know. The fog lifted just enough for the silhouette to emerge, broad, squat, unmistakable. A tiger, its long barrel pointed toward the edge of the tree line, as if sniffing out the weakest pulse. In the cramped turret of the Sherman, Corporal Jack Brenner froze. Through the cracked optics, he watched the beast turn slightly, its thick turret shifting with mechanical menace. Jack, Sergeant Mendez said in a low voice, it's real. That's a tiger, and it's waiting for us. The crew had been on patrol near the outskirts of Saint-Lô when the ambush began. First came the artillery, then the radio silence, then the realization. They were alone. The rest of the column had either fallen behind or been scattered. Now Brenner and his three crewmates sat in a steel coffin, facing one of the most feared machines of the war. Jack knew the stats. A Sherman 75mm gun couldn't reliably penetrate a tiger's frontal armor, not unless it was a miracle shot or madness. The options were bleak. Mendez suggested retreat, using the smoke as cover, but that meant exposing their rear. Dawson, the loader, wanted to flank left, though that would take them through a muddy ditch where they'd surely bog down. Jack offered neither. He stared at the map, then at the terrain, then at the tiger. There was a shallow slope behind them and a narrow gap between two stone walls to their right, a ricochet shot, the kind you read about in training but never actually attempt. If he aimed at the stone wall at the right angle, the shell could theoretically bounce and strike the tiger's thinner side armor. A gamble, a fool's move. And yet, the enemy hadn't seen them yet. Not fully. You want to bounce a shell like a damn pool shot? Mendez asked. Jack didn't flinch. It's our only chance. If we move, we die. The silence that followed was heavier than the engine hum. They all understood. This was the kind of choice that could define a man or bury him. Finally, Mendez nodded. Do it. One shot. Then we run. Dawson readied the shell with shaking hands. In the loader's corner, Michaels muttered something about his kid back home. Jack adjusted the turret manually, calculating angles, praying to geometry. The tank vibrated with tension. The tiger was beginning to move now, slowly, confidently, unaware of the Sherman nestled like a shadow. Jack exhaled, then shouted, "Fire!" The cannon roared. For a moment, nothing. The round struck the wall. Sparks, smoke, then a metallic crack. The tiger halted. Something had hit. Had it worked? Did we hit it? Dawson yelled. But Jack wasn't sure. The tiger's turret jerked violently. Then, smoke. Black. Curling smoke from the engine deck. The impossible had happened. The crew erupted in shouts. Half laughter, half disbelief. But the celebration died instantly when another shot rang out. From deeper in the woods, the Sherman rocked. "We're hit," Michael screamed. "Another one out there." Jack turned his periscope. A second tiger, this one angled, moving, alert. No more tricks left. No more geometry. Just steel and instinct. Jack made a decision then. Not about tactics, but about lives. He ordered the crew to bail. "Out, now!" Mendez hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll hold it," Jack said. Buy time. They argued for seconds, seconds too precious to waste, before the hatch opened and the others jumped. Jack spun the turret, loaded the last shell, and faced the coming monster. Alone in the belly of the Sherman, he whispered, "Let's see if they believe this shot too." Jack gripped the firing lever as the second tiger crept into view, its turret scanning the smoke-drenched tree line. The Sherman groaned, engine sputtering from the previous hit. Jack's eyes burned from the smoke seeping in through the vents, but he didn't flinch. He was alone now. Outside, he could hear the footsteps, his crew running, boots pounding against earth, moving fast. He hoped they wouldn't look back. Through the sights, he locked on to the tiger's silhouette. It was closer now, turning toward the Sherman. The shot he was about to take wouldn't destroy it, not this one, but maybe, just maybe, it could buy the time his men needed. He didn't need victory. He needed delay. Jack fired. The Sherman shook violently. The shell slammed into the tiger's left track. Sparks and debris exploded outward. The tiger stuttered, slowed, but didn't stop. Its turret spun toward him now, deliberate and cold. Jack ducked, bracing. The return shot hit them hard, just inches off center. The interior flashed white with heat, panels ripped loose, but the shell hadn't penetrated cleanly. He was still alive, barely. Blood trickled down his forehead where something metal had clipped him. The turret was jammed now, the controls half dead. The Sherman couldn't fight anymore, it could only stall. Jack climbed up, limbs shaking, and forced the hatch open. The sky above was white-gray. Snow threatened to fall. He pulled himself halfway out, blinking away soot and blood, and stared directly at the tiger. The enemy tank had paused. Its crew hadn't fired again. Jack understood. They were confused. Why wasn't the Sherman shooting back? Why was one man standing exposed in the open turret? Jack raised his hands, not in surrender, in defiance, a silhouette against smoke. Then he saw movement behind the tiger, shadows in the trees, U.S. infantry, his own, reinforcements. They had arrived. but they hadn't seen the tiger yet. They'd walk right into it. Jack shouted, waved, pointed. A burst of machine gun fire from the tiger raked across the trees near the infantry. Now they knew. Chaos erupted, gunfire, shouts, but the Sherman still stood in the tiger's path, still the only visible target. Jack dropped back inside, coughing, heart hammering. He reached for the engine lever. If he could move the tank forward, even 10 yards, he could block the tiger's angle of fire just long enough. The engine wheezed, started, died. He slammed the panel. Again. The tank sputtered forward, inch by inch. The tiger fired once more. This time, it hit the ground just ahead. Dirt and steel exploded. Jack kept pushing. Finally, the Sherman stopped, right in the tiger's path. No more shots came. Instead, he heard the faint sound of shouting from the forest. Then a thunderous boom. The tiger rocked, hit from the side. Bazooka, artillery, he didn't know, but the explosion was real. Flames erupted from the turret. The mighty tank staggered, then fell still. Jack collapsed inside his ruined Sherman, exhaling as if for the first time in minutes. Then, hands, pulling him up. Familiar voices. Dawson, Mendez, Michaels. They had come back. He's alive, someone shouted. Jack blinked. Faces blurred. The sky above him was turning gold with afternoon light. They carried him away as smoke billowed from both tanks, symbols of sacrifice, steel against steel. Later, they'd say it was madness. They'd call it suicidal. But to those who'd been there, to the men who saw the Sherman block the tiger's fire just long enough, it was something else entirely. It was a moment, a defiance, a man who stood between death and his friends, and did not run. Jack never remembered much of what came next, but every soldier in that unit would carry the image with them, a single gunner in a crippled tank staring down a legend and making one of his own. The field hospital near Bastogne was quiet in the early dawn. Snowflakes drifted past the frosted windows as nurses moved silently between rows of cots. Jack Morgan lay in one of them, wrapped in blankets, eyes fixed on the ceiling. His left arm was in a sling. His ribs ached with every breath. A thin scar now crossed his temple. But he was alive. The nurses called him lucky. The other patients called him crazy. Command hadn't called at all. Not yet. 3 days after the engagement, Lieutenant Dawson visited, cap in hand. "They're not sure what to do with you," he said, voice low. "You defied retreat orders, took an immobile tank against a tiger, nearly got yourself killed." Jack looked at him, silent. Dawson continued, "But you also stopped that tiger from flanking the ridge. Without you, half our unit might have been wiped out. So, they're torn." Jack didn't care about medals. He didn't want to be remembered. He just wanted to sleep without seeing the turret turning toward him. He wanted to stop hearing the shell hit. He wanted silence, but silence didn't come. Not at night, not when he closed his eyes. The others returned to duty. Dawson, Mendez, even Michaels, who'd taken shrapnel to the League. Jack couldn't. His hearing in one ear was gone. His hands shook when he tried to hold a pencil. A colonel from command visited once, said words like commendation and evaluation, but Jack barely heard them. It all sounded distant, muffled, as if happening to someone else. Weeks passed, then months. Jack was transferred to a base in England, then sent home. New Jersey was cold and gray that year. His mother met him at the station in a heavy coat and tears. His father didn't speak, just hugged him, once, hard. At home, everything looked smaller. The kitchen, the street, even the people. Neighbors stopped him at the store, called him a hero, a legend. One man said, "You made the Sherman into something it was never meant to be." Jack only nodded. He didn't correct them. He never spoke of the day. He never described the smoke or the silence before the shell or the weight of the firing lever. He never told anyone that. In the moment, he hadn't felt brave, only alone. But then, one winter evening, a letter arrived. It was from Michaels. Inside was a photo, a grainy image of the burned-out Sherman, snow on its turret. Below it, a line scribbled in pencil. Still standing. Jack stared at it for a long time. The next day, he visited the local high school. The history teacher had invited him months ago. He'd always said no. This time he went, he told the students about the cold, about the steel, about the noise, but most of all, he told them about standing between danger and your friends, and how sometimes doing something foolish might just save a life. Not because it's smart, but because no one else will. Years later, that photo would be framed in a small war museum in Trenton, no name on the plaque. Just a caption, one shot, one tank, one decision. Jack passed away in 1983, quietly in his sleep. His family found the letter still folded in his wallet, yellowed with age. And though his name never made the textbooks, to the men of his unit, he remained something greater than legend. He was the reason they came home, inspired by true accounts from U.S. tank crews in the European theater, 1944.